Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. How's Eddie Frederick?
So glad you can join us. Trinidad and Tobago's DPP condemns Chief Justice's ventilation in the public domain of issues that could have been privately dealt with. This story takes the lead in our 966th edition of Caribbean Perspective for Monday, 19th October 2020. Details after this important message.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Welcome back. Director of Public Prosecutions of Trinidad and Tobago, Roger Gaspard, is taking issue with Chief Justice Ivor Archie over his recent warning that the criminal justice system is near collapse. The DPP describes this claim in the CJ's address at the virtual opening of the law term on October 7th as spectacularly disingenuous and misleading. Alicia Boucher of TV6 News reports.
The DPP began his condemnation of the CJ's assessment of the present state of the criminal justice system by stating that his preference would have been for private, candid consultations on certain issues among various stakeholders, if only to reduce the prospect of institutional degradation, reputational damage in the court of public opinion. But he stated that the public ringing of alarm bells cannot be properly addressed privately. The DPP said he took full responsibility for the fact that only 12 indictments were filed by his office during the last law term. But he pointed out that this was due to several factors, including the perennial shortage of legal and support staff. He also cited the adjustments occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to comply with the guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health. The DPP further stated that the judiciary had reneged on an arrangement to accept, other than by electronic means, the traditional filing of approximately 450 committals and related indictments together with transcripts. Gaspard said that for the Chief Justice to suggest that the small number of indictments filed was a significant contributor to the criminal justice system being brought to near collapse was to deliberately close one's eyes to the blinding light of the statistics on matters still awaiting trial and for which indictments have already been filed. He recalled that at the opening of the 2018-2019 law term, the Chief Justice had reported that there were 1,706 matters filed at the Criminal High Court, the status of which remained pending as at July 31st, 2019. Of that number, 960 were pending for 10 years or more. Therefore, the DPP pointed out that the small number of cases filed in the past year did not prevent trial judges from getting on with the business of conducting trials in those matters for which indictments had already been filed. He noted that the CJ had said that the elevation of judges from the criminal high courts to the Court of Appeal left the lower courts without the full complement of judges. However, he further noted that these changes were made by the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, which is headed by the Chief Justice, making it difficult to comprehend how this matter, its prevention and rectification, could have been beyond the judiciary's control. Alicia Boucher, TV6 News.
7 people have been arrested for breaching COVID regulations during a drug SUSU registration in Tobago. TV6's Elizabeth Williams has this report.
The 7 were among a large group of persons who gathered at Shepherd's Inn, Crown Point, to register for the DSS scheme. There was a lot of vehicular traffic as officers tried to maintain law and order. People, including residents of Trinidad, began gathering from as early as 5 a.m. for the 8 a.m. registration, causing police to issue several warnings. According to a release from the TTPS, it came to the attention of Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith, who is in the United Kingdom, through images and videos that long lines had gathered at Crown Point for the registration Saturday morning. He gave instructions to arrest anyone who was in breach of the COVID-19 regulations and to shut down the DSS operation. While TV6 News was present, 2 women were arrested. 5 more were later detained. However, the DSS operation was not shut down and continued into the afternoon. Those arrested included a waitress from St. Augustine, Trinidad, and the 6 Tobagonians, a lifeguard from Charlottesville, a woman from Golden Lane, and others from Bonaccord, Scarborough, Pembroke, and Government Trace. They will appear virtually before a Scarborough magistrate on Monday. Corporal Andrews laid the charges. Persons registering under DSS were told to hand in $3,500 and earn $23,000. No regift. Payout is every 1 to 28 business days. Those who paid received a receipt stating, "Please understand the risk you are getting yourself into. This is a non-refundable transaction. Stacking method is utilized for placement of individuals. Please allow the passing of 72 hours for your name to be added to the chart." Acting Commissioner of Police MacDonald Jacobs said the COVID regulations are very clear, prohibiting gatherings of more than 10 persons. Elizabeth Williams, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Over now to Guyana, where the former president, David Granger, is very confident that the election petitions filed by the APNU-AFC will carry, allowing for the coalition to be returned to government. HGP's Wendell Badri filed this story.
Former president of Guyana and leader of the APNU-AFC, David Granger, preferred that his party has done intensive and extensive research and have compiled a dossier of anomalies that were perpetrated at the recently concluded general and regional elections, and therefore is adamant that the election petitions filed by the coalition will stand and prove to the nation that massive fraud was perpetrated. The leader's comments come a day after APNU-AFC Member of Parliament Roysdale Ford, Senior Counsel, revealed that the case management hearing for the petitions will be held on October 22, 2020. Mr. Granger, during the interview, posited that through its research, the party was even able to ascertain that there was involvement in the electoral process by CARICOM prime ministers.
And we know that there was an involvement of the CARICOM prime ministers. We know that the international community had sent observers. So we have a comprehensive report, a petition which we have presented to the courts, and we feel that we will be able to represent the interests of those people whose votes were not properly counted, and bring an end to the saga of the GRE 2020.
While listing some of the alleged anomalies which occurred at the general and regional elections, such as persons voting on behalf of the dead, migrant voters, persons from one voting district casting their ballots in another, among others, the leader posited that most of the anomalies lie with the voters list, for which the PPPC is responsible since they heavily objected to house-to-house registration, among other things, leading up to the elections.
From January last year, in my first communication with the Election Commission, I insisted we should have credible elections. In my communication to the diplomats, particularly from America, Britain, Canada, and the European Union, I said we must have credible elections. And the PPP at all material times was only concerned with maintaining this and preventing the house-to-house registration. Look back at everything the PPP did say. They did not want house-to-house registration. They did not want a new list.
Leading up to the 2020 general and regional elections, the Vice President, Bharat Jagdeo, who was then the leader of the opposition, had stated on multiple occasions that a new voters list was not necessary, since the same voters list had been used in 2018 for the conduct of local government elections and the results were unchallenged, among other things. In July 2019, Justice James Patterson, who was the then chairperson of GCOM, had signed a gazetted order for house-to-house registration to commence on July 20, 2019. Justice James Patterson's appointment was subsequently deemed as unconstitutional by the Caribbean Court of Justice, after which he resigned from the position of the chair, paving the way for the appointment of Justice Claudette Singh, retired, who halted the exercise subsequently. During this time, the coalition government had been toppled by a motion of confidence in the National Assembly, and according to the Constitution, was required to hold elections within 3 months. When questioned by the host of the program, Randolph Critchlow, as to why he accepted the results of the 2020 general and regional elections, knowing that it was fraudulent, the former president posited.
I accepted the declaration because it was lawful. I had no choice. It was not a matter of choice, it was a matter of the Constitution. And the Constitution prevailed. And we were more or less obliged to pursue the course of a petition, which we have done.
Wendell Badri for the HGP Nightly News.
Over in Jamaica, the Ministry of Health there continues its surveillance as the dengue threat continues to grow. Dwayne Anderson of TVJ News reports.
Officials say the dengue virus could make a return as more mosquito breeding sites are created by the increased rainfall across the country. It is why Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton used his tour of the quarantine zone in Whitfield Town, St. Andrew, to spread the message about the dengue threat.
The index in this area, I'm told, is about 15%. We have to get it down. It's not that high, but every time it rains or drought and you truck water in and you store water in containers, you're going to get an increase in the incidence of breeding.
Dr. Tufton admits the public health sector could be plunged into turmoil if large numbers of dengue cases start showing up at hospitals and health centers.
The last thing we want as public health, or the country, frankly speaking, is to have a dengue outbreak with COVID, because that would be a double whammy for all of us. It would mean persons requiring hospital care, greater demand on the system, already burdened and stressed out system, and of course to the individuals who are so impacted. You don't want to have dengue and COVID at the same time, because that is going to really be a disaster.
Residents are also storing more water to use for sanitization amidst COVID-19, and those water containers could be the perfect breeding sites for the Aedes aegypti mosquito that carries dengue. Persons are therefore being encouraged to cover all water containers, bore holes in cans before throwing them away, and removing all old tires and other old containers from around the house.
Say to citizens again, say to Jamaica, do what you can to destroy breeding sites. Work with the vector control workers. They are all over the place. They are branded.
Now in Waterford, where another quarantine measure is in effect, a similar message about dengue was echoed to residents. But for St. Catherine South Eastern Member of Parliament, Robert Miller, a major part of the response to dengue prevention must be led by the municipal leadership in Portmore.
And to appeal to the mayor especially and the councillor for the Waterford division, to clean the gullies, to bush the place, and to ensure that the water runs freely. We're in our rainy season, hurricane season to be exact, ensure that the water runs freely so persons can have, can eliminate the Aegypti mosquitoes.
Dwayne Anderson, TVJ News.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.